Hey guys, can you see my screen? Anybody? Okay, perfect. There you go. That's all I wanted. Okay, so this one is similar to question number 1, where you have to simplify the rational expression and then you want to state the non-permissible value. So I'm going to do question 1D. So what it looks like is you have like a quadratic over a quadratic. Okay, so for question number 1, what you're going to want to do is always take out the greatest common factor first. You're going to try to factor the top and then the bottom separately. Okay, so for question number 1D, you're going to factor out the common value, which is 5. Okay, so they all have a 5 in common. So what I'm going to do is divide all the values by 5. So that'll be 2k squared plus 55 divided by 5 is 11. And then 75 divided by 5 is 15. Okay, so always take out the greatest common factor first. And at the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take out a 10 because that's common between the values of 20, -10, and -150. Okay, so once you've taken out the greatest common factor, next you're going to factor the 2k squared plus 11k plus 15 from the top, and then you're going to factor as well the k squared minus k minus 15. So that's going to give me, so I want to find two numbers that multiply to 2 and 15, so that's going to be 30k squared. I have to find two numbers that multiply to that, and they have to add up to the middle, which is 11k. Okay, so the numbers would be, let's see, 6 and 5, right? So we have positive 6k and positive 5k. So they both add to 11k. So I'm going to do box method here, and then if there's another factoring thing, I'll do that in the next one, just to kind of practice all of them. So this is box method. Box method, I'm going to put the first value 2k squared. So this guy goes into the top left box, and the 15 goes into the bottom right box. The two values I just found, which were 6k and 5k, go in the remaining boxes in any order. And then what you want to do is factor out. You want to say, what two values give me 2k squared? Well, I know that 2k and k multiply to 2k squared. The reason I had to put 2k there is because I need to be able to get a 6k with that number, so that's going to help me if I do that. And then here, for 5k, k is already on this side length, so to get this one, you're going to multiply by positive 5. Okay, and then over here, you're going to have to multiply by positive 3 to get to 6k, because we have 2k at the top. And then you want to double check, does 5 multiplied by 3 give me 15? Yes, it does. So my factors are for the top, 2k plus 5. So this is one bracket, and this is the other bracket, k plus 3. So this unit is quite harder. Why? Because you need to be able to factor really, really well for this unit. So if you're still struggling with factoring, message me and we can kind of do like a one-on-one session and practice factoring, because that's going to keep you back. Like that's going to slow you down when you're doing these questions, is factoring. At the bottom, I need to factor out, I need to still factor k squared minus k minus 15, and there's a shortcut here. So here I just need to find two numbers that multiply to -15, and they have to add to the middle, which is -1. So that would be, let's see, 3 and 5 won't work, so what am I missing? 15 divided by 5 would give us 2, so that won't work. Oh, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so that's the reason I'm missing a 2, if you guys didn't notice. So there's a 2 missing here when I factored out the 10, so that makes more sense. That's why it wasn't working. Okay, let's try that again. So in this method, I'm going to do, let's try decomposition. Okay, so I need to find two numbers that multiply to 2 times negative 15, so that will be negative 30k squared, and they have to add up to the middle, which is negative 1k. Okay, so I have to find two numbers that multiply to the first and last multiplied and add up to the middle. So that would be my the same numbers that I had, but I'm going to have negative 6k in this time and then positive 5k to add up to negative 1k. Okay, so this one is decomposition method, where I write the first term 2k squared, the middle, which is negative k, I'm going to rewrite it as negative 6k plus 5k, and then minus 15. So you're writing this guy, then you're splitting that middle with the two numbers I just found, and then writing out the negative 15. Brackets around your first two terms and brackets around your last two terms. You're going to factor out the 2 and the k from the first bracket, leaving us with k minus 3. And then taking out a positive 5 will leave us with k minus 3. Okay, so our brackets are the numbers in front gives us one bracket. So this is going to give us 2k plus 5. And then the double bracket, you see how they're both k minus 3? That's going to be your other bracket, k minus 3. So that's how you factor. Okay, so all this work is just factoring. So if you're confident in factoring, that should have been easier for you. If you're struggling with factoring, this is what's going to stop you. So make sure you guys practice your factoring. Once you have it factored fully, this right here is the best time to find your non-permissible values. Non-permissible values come from your denominator. This is your denominator in a fraction. Any value of k that will make the denominator 0 are non-permissible values. So what you do is you take each of these factors. So anything that's multiplying, this is a factor, this is a factor, and this is a factor. Factors are separated by multiplication. So you take each factor, make it equal to 0, and solve for the variable. So this one doesn't have a variable, so you can ignore it for non-permissible values. This one, you have to take 2k plus 5, make it equal to 0, and you have to take k minus 3 and make it equal to 0. You're going to isolate for k by subtracting 5 on both sides, and then 0 minus 5 is minus 5, divided by 2. K is not allowed to be negative 5 over 2, because if it is, that makes that fraction or that factor 0, and then all of it becomes 0. So that's a non-permissible value. And then here you just have to move over the negative 3 to get you that k is not allowed to be equal to positive 3. So those are how you get non-permissible values. So they come from the denominator, okay? Once you have your non-permissible values, now you're going to cross things off. So you can cross off the factors that are identical at the top and bottom. So this is identical to this 2k plus 5. These two guys are not the same. You cannot touch them. You can't just take out a k and a k because they're the same. K plus 3, they are attached to each other, and k minus 3, they're attached to each other. You can only cross them off if they are identical factors. So if you see addition or subtraction, only if they're identical do you cross them off. So far we have left 5 over 10, k plus 3, and k minus 3. What we can still do is simplify the 5 and the 10. Well, you can divide the top by 5 and the bottom by 5. So that is simplifying as well. So we need to write k plus 3 at the top. There's a 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. We don't need to write that at the top. But at the bottom, 10 divided by 5, we need to write it as 2, and then k minus 3. This would be our final answer, okay? So factor everything first when it's the rational expression. Once it's factored, where I put that the asterisk, the star, this is where you want to find the non-permissible values from your denominator. And then once you have the non-permissible values, start crossing off any factors that are identical, and then simplify any numbers, like 5 and 10 are coefficients, simplify those. So that's how I got my final answer. So that was question number 1. Again, anytime if you need some clarification, just go to the comments and just write me a comment. Let's go to number 2. So this one is similar to question 2 in your assignment. Okay, so this is where you have to add 2 rational expressions. Okay, so step 1, you want to get common denominators by factoring. So whenever it comes to adding and subtracting, you need the same denominators to be able to add them. So that's kind of like your first goal. So for the first one, you're going to factor the denominators only. When it comes to adding and subtracting, factor the denominators only. So leave the top as it is. But at the bottom, this is called the difference of squares. So what you want to do is you want to factor it as x minus 5, x plus 5. Adding with, again, the numerator, the top, you don't touch. Leave it as it is when it comes to adding and subtracting. But you want to factor this guy right here. So to factor that, we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to 2 and negative 5. So that'll be negative 10x squared. And they have to add up to 9x. So the numbers that would work would be, let's see, positive 10 and negative 1. Okay, so those are the 2 numbers. So if I multiply them, I get negative 10x squared, and if I add them together, I get 9x. So I'll use the fraction method when it comes to factoring. So that's where I write the first term twice. And then I divide by the 2 numbers I just found, which were 10x and minus x. Then you want to simplify each fraction. So 2 and 10 simplifies to 1 over 5, because you can divide the top and bottom by 2. And x squared over x simplifies to 1x at the top, because an x crosses off from the top and bottom. The 2 and the negative 1 don't simplify any further, so you can leave them as they are. And then we have x squared divided by x leaves us with just x at the top. So those are our factors. Our factors are x from here plus 5 from here. The other factor would be 2x minus 1. So that's how you factor. Now double check that that if you did FOIL, will it end up as the original? Yes. So that's what you want to confirm, is that if you were to do FOIL, that it looks the same as what you started with. So once you have it factored, now you want to figure out what your lowest common denominator is, meaning what is the denominator that's going to be the same for it all. Well, if you notice, they both have this factor. Each fraction both has an x plus 5, so they share an x plus 5. That needs to be in your denominator. And any other factors that are different also need to be included. So here we have an x minus 5, that needs to be included, and we have a factor of 2x minus 1. That needs to be included. So all other factors need to be written out. So once you know your lowest common denominator, that's what you need to do to the top and bottom to get them to look like that. You need the denominator to look like x plus 5, x minus 5, and 2x minus 1. So let's start with the first fraction. So you'll notice that I never touch the tops when it comes to adding and subtracting for now. Okay, so now we're trying to get it to look like that lowest common denominator. If you guys look at the first fraction, it's missing the factor of 2x minus 1 for it to have all 3. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Now we look at the second fraction. It's missing the x minus 5 for it to look like that lowest common denominator. What I do to the bottom, do to the top. The reason I do that is now they have the same denominators, and I can write it as one common denominator. So all of this is going to be as one common denominator of 2x minus 1 that they share, x minus 5, and x plus 5. So we're getting that common denominator so that they share it. Now we're looking at the tops. The top, we're going to have to do FOIL here to put that together. And here we're going to have to do FOIL here to put these guys together. So FOIL for the first fraction is going to look like this. 2x times 3x, that's your first terms, would be 6x squared. FOIL, then we do our outsides. Outsides would be positive 30x. So that's this and this. And then our inside would be negative 3x. And then our last would be these two of negative 15. So I'm just going to extend that top line because it just continues. There's just this long top. FOIL for the second part. Now this positive, if it was negative, if it was a subtraction, we would have to distribute it as well. But here it's positive, so that does make it a little easier. So we just have to do positive 4x squared times x, which would be 4x cubed. And then we have 4x squared times negative 5, which is negative 20x squared. And then we have our insides, negative 1x, and then our last terms, these two guys together, which would be positive 5. So now I want to join together all the like terms in the top, meaning all the like terms in this top level right here, so the numerator. So I have a 4x cubed, and I have nothing else, so that's gone. I have negative 20, and I have a positive 6. So that's going to be negative 14x squared. So that's going to be that and that put together. Now all our x's, we have a 30x, we have a minus 3, meaning subtract 3, and we have a minus 1, subtract 1. So that's going to give me positive 26x. So that's these guys here, gone. And then negative 15 plus 5 is going to be negative 10 simplified, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is just simplify and put together all like terms at the top. And then at the bottom, we just want to take out, we just want to write the common factors, or all the factors that we have. 2x minus 1, x minus 5, x plus 5. Now with this question, there's nothing, even if I did factor something out at the top, I wouldn't be able to cross anything off with the bottom, so there's no real point in continuing. This would be your final answer right here, okay? But if you can simplify, meaning if you can do what we did at the top in this question for 2, you would do that. Now I'm going to find my non-permissible values as well. So the non-permissible values come from your denominator. So you always want to take it from the original factored question, okay? Because you don't want to cross anything off and lose them. You don't want to take it usually from the answer, because sometimes you'll simplify and you might forget some. So the best place to find your non-permissible values would be in this step right here. And they'll actually be the same as in the answer. So it really won't matter in this question, but sometimes it does. So the factors that I see in the denominator are x minus 5. You would make that equal to 0. You would make x plus 5. That's another factor in your denominator, equal to 0. And another different factor that you have in your denominator is 2x minus 1 equals 0. Make them all equal to 0 and then solve for x. This negative is going to go to the other side, leaving you with x equals 5. And that's what x is not allowed to be equal to. So that's your non-permissible value. Bring this positive 5 to the other side, which gives us x equals negative 5. Gosh, that's a loud truck. X cannot equal negative 5. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm looking at the denominators, grabbing each factor, making it equal to 0. This one here, you're going to take the negative 1, move it over. 2x equals positive 1 then, because 0 plus 1 is 1. And then divide it by the number in front of x. And that gives us that x is not allowed to be 1/2. So there's 3 non-permissible values here, and it's going to match our answer as well here. Okay, so since we didn't cross off any factors, this means that they're going to be the same from the top to the bottom. So any non-permissible values need to be included so that the denominator does not equal 0. So these are the 3 non-permissible values. Okay, so that is similar to your question number 2 in your assignment. So like I said, if you want to, like I'm going to post this later on, if you want to rewatch this, pause this, do it, and have it beside you as you're doing your assignment, that would help. Now your next question in your assignment, I'm just going to pull it up. I just want to see what's different in yours. But you're going to see that I'm going into multiplication anyway, and it'll be easier for you. So yours is slightly harder than the one you guys have, but this one will prepare you for that question as well. Okay. I'm just grabbing that one so I can look at it. Yeah, so this one's like question number 3. You guys have, and so the only difference is you guys have like a multiplication here and then a division, but you're going to see that I'm going to have a multiplication here by the end of it anyway, so it's going to be the same amount of work. Okay, so step 1, factor every and division in there and factor top bottoms of every number, only factor the denominator. Here we want to factor all. Okay, so for question number 3, so like factoring is kind of like the most important thing here. You want to find 2 numbers that multiply to 8 and -3. So that's going to be 2 numbers that multiply to -24y squared, and they have to add to the middle, which is -2y. So I'm doing the one at a time. So the 2 numbers that would work would be, let's see, we have 8 and 3. No, that wouldn't work. We have 4y. So those would add -2y. Okay, so when we're doing our method, use whatever method you want for factoring. So it's going to be, I prefer my fraction method. I find it a lot faster. -6y and 4y that I'm dividing it by. So my first fraction, if I divide the top and bottom by 2, you're going to get 4y minus 3. So I divided this all by 2 and y. That's what I did. Here, I'm dividing by 4 and y. The top and bottom. Okay, so that's the first fraction, or the top of the first fraction. Have a difference of squares, which is y plus 1, y minus 1. So whenever the y squared with a sign of a perfect square, you need to factor it like that. Dividing by. Now we're going to factor this guy right here. I multiply 2 numbers that give me 4y squared, and they have to add up to -3y. So the 2 numbers that work would be -4y, and then I'm using my fraction because I just find it way faster, but you guys do whatever works for you. So -4y, divide this first fraction, second fraction by just y minus 2 fraction plus 1. So that's the top, and then the bottom, I'm going to factor this guy right here, 2, and then y minus 1. So I just 2, and that's all I did. more space. Running out of space here. So I'll just rewrite this for you guys to see a little bit better. So this unit is, as I'm writing this, I just want to tell you that this unit repeats itself in 30-2. Okay, so if you're planning on going into 30-2, you're going to see the exact same unit repeat itself all over again. But if you're planning on going into 30-1, it just builds from there. Okay, so it's important to make sure it like practice, because you'll make your life way easier next year. Okay, so for the last part, this part right here, guys, so I'm gonna leave it like the command you guys do. It is sweet, meaning I like to have the y's first and then the constants. So I'm gonna rewrite it as -4y plus, same thing, but just reordered. And then y plus be factored any further. So that's what the second fraction. I'm just going to close my window. People are like racing down the streets for some reason. There you go. Okay, so this is the best time right now to find your non-permissible values. So your non-permissible values, guys, are going to come from the denominator. All this, we have to look at all these for non-permissible values. But there's a trick to this. Whenever you have division, you're also going to have the top of the fraction. The reason being is that after a division sign is going to flip. I don't know why I did that. Values at the top and bottoms. So anything that I outlined in red, you're going to have to look at the non-permissible values there, because they're going to do a reciprocal. So you're always, and then that top is actually going to go to the denominator, which means that it could give us a permissible value. So we need to look at those values. Okay, there you go. Okay, so working on right now, NPVs. So we're going to look at y plus 1, that's a factor, make it equal to 0. We're going to have to look at y minus 1, make it equal to 0. So anything that has a value of y, you need to look at it. So that's this guy. I already included, I don't need to write it again. So once you have, repeat it. Here, I need that one equals 0. I need to solve y plus 1 equals 0. That guy right there. This one is the same as the one that I had first of all. Y get equal to 0. So all these guys, you need to solve for the non-permissible values. So so the first one, you're going to make y equal to -1, one of them. That's what y is not allowed to be. Not equal positive, because you move the -1 over and it changes signs. This guy you're going to move over and it becomes equal +2. So that's another one. Here you're going to subtract 1 on both sides. Then you're going to get 2y equals 0 minus is -1. You're going to divide by 2. Y is not allowed to be negative. And then this one here, move the 3 over. So -4y becomes equal to -3. And then you would divide by -4 on both sides. So y is also not allowed to be 3 over 4, because 2 negatives become a positive sign. So there are 5 permissible values here that I to look at. So it comes right after the divisions. You need to flip it and you need to look at the top and bottom for the non-values. Okay. Once you found them and you start, you're going to flip everything and then cross things off. You can only cross things off once there's a multiplication sign between them. I'm going to go back to the start. 4y minus 3. 2y plus 1. Multiplication. Do you see how I, instead of writing a division, multiplication, and then the 2y minus 1 goes to the top, and the y minus 2, 2y plus 1 goes to the bottom. So they switch levels. Same thing for the next fraction, multiplication. So that means the example you guys have on your assignment is a little easier because you have one less flip to do. So as you guys can see, I flipped all those fractions that came after the division symbol. And this is where you cross things off. This is my favorite part. So anytime you have a factor in your numerator and the same factor in your denominator, they can cross each other off. So those guys are identical, so they can cross each other off. And then I have a 2y plus 1 and a 2y plus 1. I have a y plus 1 and y plus 1. There's one other thing, guys. There's a trick here that also, it comes up a lot in 30-1 and 30-2 that you want to watch. Notice that this right here, these two guys that I'm outlining, look like they're the same. They have the same number. You can actually simplify them by factoring out a negative. So in this case right here, I'm going to take out a negative symbol. So I'm going to factor out a negative sign by putting it in front of the within. And the reason I do that is now I can cross this off with this. They're actually going to be identical if I take out that negative sign. Okay, so that's an important trick that I want you guys to remember. You're going to see that happen a lot in 30-2 especially. Okay, so now look at anything you have at the top. We only have the value of 2 as a factor left at the top, so write that out. So whatever's left at the top, write it out. What's left at the bottom, there you need, so that didn't get crossed off. So we need to include the, so that is our answer. So anything at the top, write it out. Anything left at the bottom, write it out. Final answer. And then usually at the back for the answers, they say the non-permissible values right after. They would say -1 because there's positive and -1. There's -1 and there's 3/4. So that's how they usually write the final. So that one is similar to your question number 3. And that's it. That's it, guys. So what I want to show you was the first 3 questions because that's what the first example, example number 1, summarizes lesson 6.1. An example, adding and subtracting. If I look at your textbook, so 6.2. 6 is used to summarize, is for number 3, and then 6.3 would be question per lesson. Okay, so what you want to do is, the assignment is not due yet, guys. So the assignment is right now due, but if you do the first 3 questions, then you only have 3 questions left for the next week. Got it? So you don't hand it in just yet. Just work on the next 3 questions, and then it's breaking up your assignment, so it's not at the end of it, and it's not like hopefully too overwhelming. So if you guys have any questions, stay on here. Let me know if there are. Another one. Okay, so yeah, if you guys have any questions, stay on here. If you want to comment, if you want me to go over something a little bit clearly, ask me, stick on here and just ask me in the chat or come online and unmute your mic so that way I see. So what I'll do is once we're done this chat, I'll post this and then you guys can try the examples that I gave you. So like I said, guys, factoring is key. Like if you can factor that, if you can't factor, kind of stop factoring and then revisit this. Okay, so make sure your confidence that you can factor correctly, do anything else. Okay, keep pressing on something. Okay, here. So do you guys have any questions? How are you guys finding? Are you guys okay with everything? Let me know. I'm here. You can always email me. I'll try to help you as much as they were able to with some of their questions. So keep doing that, right? Just if you need another example, just say, hey, you know, like I'm stuck on exam. What do I do? Okay, stuff. I hope have a nice Thursday. Tomorrow I'm still emotional help. So keep that in mind. And whatever you guys are doing. Okay, see you guys.